On?
Hans is on.
My apologies.
Hey, there you are. That's great. All right, folks. Thanks Hans, for joining us. We have our quorum. We're ready to proceed. Thanks for the patience of the members of the public. And welcome to the April 26, 2023 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Select Board to implement the rules and regulations of the State Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town Bylaw governing the wetlands. As a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan. Steve, why don't I'll do it so as I can see is Steve Ivas.
Yep, Steve Ivas, Conservation Agent.
Wendy,
Wendy Garpo, Conservation Commissioner.
Tom,
Tom Palmer, Commissioner.
Arthur,
Arthur Doyle, member.
Hans.
Hans Finlingen, Commission member.
Where did Wendy? Oh, Wendy. There you go. There you are.
I already went,
You already
John.
did. Okay. All right. We're all set to go as a second matter of formality.
Ingrid didn't go.
John.
Oh, you.
Debating member.
Thanks, Ingrid. Thank you very much. And she's on by phone and hopefully later on joined by computer. The second matter of formality is that we always invite people to make comments, ask questions, but we do ask that you introduce yourself for the record. And this Zoom meeting is being recorded. We have three items on the agenda. The first is a school building committee proposal for a land swap. Second, we have some business items to attend to, which will be after the fact, and that is to approve some minutes of prior meetings. And the last is to appoint a member of or to designate a member of the Conservation Commission to the Climate Action Control Committee. So let's go right to number one, which is the school building proposal. And I would call upon Sean O'Rourke to tell us what this is about.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. If I may, I'd just like to share my screen just to walk through a brief presentation that myself and members of the list will be going through, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep. And I believe whoever is hosting just needs to allow me to share my screen also. So Steve, I think that may be you.
Yes, it is, but do you know how to do that?
If you, yeah, so I believe if you hover over my picture on the upper right,
Yes,
some blue buttons, the three
yes.
dots, click on that and then make me a co-host.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I just did that.
3 years of COVID, we're finally figuring it all out.
Right.
Appreciate it. And just
Sure.
let me know when it comes through, please.
Yeah, we can see it, Sean.
All right.
Yep.
We'll do our best to be as brief. So, as this committee is aware, the school building committee was formed in February 2019 to address, the stated overcrowding at that time. So since February 2019, we've been working essentially to identify land and develop a program to address the overcrowding. So tonight we just want to talk about the land. The main thing that we did, as we started out was a site selection, really scrubbing the town to look for things. The very first thing that we did as a committee is, we issued an RFP to try to secure land by purchase, and we got no responses from that. After that, we worked with the town. The town provided us a list of roughly 107 parcels, 86 of which were below 6 acres. So it didn't work with the programmatic needs for the school that we had. The remaining 21 parcels there are essentially made up of, existing infrastructure, schools, park parcels. It also had conservation parcels, Pope's Pond, Turner's Pond, and then 6 other town parcels for police headquarters, cemetery, DPW. Also, as a committee, we did approach St. Mary's of the Hills, and they were not interested at that time, nor are they interested recently. I think there was a letter in the Milton Times stating that they're not interested in selling. We did look at the Someone pause on that.
Sean, yeah, sure. Can you hold on? It looks like Laurie's iPad. Can you go on mute, please? Because we're getting sound from, I think, from you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
So after we had, went through and looked at all the town parcels that were there, we started identifying private parcels that we approached. So St. Mary's of the Hills, we approached first. They were not interested. Their school program was doing well. And as I mentioned recently in the Milton Times, they issued a letter basically stating that, they're still doing well and they're not interested in selling. We approached the Archdiocese for St. Pius, but the Archdiocese only wanted to provide a 3-acre parcel at St. Pius. So again, it wasn't big enough for what we needed. There was a horse farm that's up by the access road that we looked at that was essentially sold and is now being a 40B. There was a parcel that the hospital had along Highland Ave that I think everyone's familiar with. That's now the memory care project that's going on. And we also talked to Milton Academy. So we did our best to kind of scrub through everything. At the end of it, we came to identify parcel D656A, also known as the Lamb Conservation Land. And that was our preferred parcel that we looked at. We approached this committee, last year with a proposal to utilize 6.8 acres of that parcel to develop a new upper middle school, which is, this is what we presented last year that everyone, this committee voted on and approved. After the approval of essentially all the committees, I walked the site with the state forester, and the gentleman, as I walked with him, he educated me that the first 300 feet of the Lamb parcel was the ecologically most valuable portion. Basically, if he had to give it a number, he said it was about 80%. So if we could save that first 300 feet, we'd save about 80% of the ecological valuable portion of it. So the school building committee pulled back our approved plans of last year voluntarily, and then basically worked to develop, the options that we're here to present tonight. While we were working on those options, we also pivoted. Opportunity arose for Fonpon. That arose in October through December of last year. For us as a committee, it was tough because we weren't sure it was guaranteed, but we had to pursue essentially a dual path. So one portion of our committee was still working on Gow Road, and another portion of our committee, including myself, worked very hard to get Fonpon. There was a lot of work that went over the holidays, not only by myself, but by members of the select board and the town administrator, Nick Milano. And as we know, that one fell through by no means of ours. This is the St. Joseph just backed out. So that other side of the parallel path that we were working, we developed this option, which is School Building Committee Parcel 2. What that encompasses is we're looking at realigning Gow Road as shown in red. And what that allows us to do is utilize a portion of the Parks parcel that's on the opposite side of Gow Road, and then merge it with a smaller portion of conservation land. So by doing that, we realigned Gow Road. We're able to provide now a 50-foot conservation buffer with Home Inc., where previously last year we had 0 buffer with Home Inc. And then additionally, if you add in a 50-foot zoning buffer, it's basically a 100-foot buffer there. From Blue Hills Parkway, as I mentioned, we pulled it back 300 feet. And then essentially the upper right portion of the map, the green, is existing conservation land that's going to stay there to remain. So overall, we're only utilizing 2.8 acres of the Lamb conservation land, essentially a third of the size of the parcel. The other 2/3 of the Lamb conservation land is going to remain as is. And then we're merging that small portion of conservation land with about 4.5 acres parks land. To go through, some of the legalities of with the Lamb conservation land, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Zulis to kind of take on the presentation for the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Sean. That was faster than I thought you'd be. So I'll try to be I'll try to be as quick and as brief as you were. I'm going to try to be brief and focus primarily on what has changed since last year when we came before you. I think most of you, if not all of you, are aware of the Article 97 procedure that we need to go through for this land swap. Throughout the process, we've been following the guidance of town council, and the procedure, as most of you know, is we need a 2/3 vote at town meeting, a 2/3 vote of the Massachusetts legislature, and approval of the governor. We also need approval of the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And town council has been working with that office for approximately a year and a half on these proposals. And at no time have we received any indication that we should move forward with this. We haven't received any formal approval, and we couldn't until we get past town meeting. But we've received no indication that we shouldn't move forward with this and seek town meeting approval. Certainly, if we had received any such indication, we wouldn't be moving forward. So, and also, we believe we need the approval of the Secretary of the Interior because there was likely some federal money used in this process, and that connection is made through the Secretary of Environmental Affairs office, and so that's the process. So that's the process that we'll use if approved by town meeting. Sean, if you could go to the next slide, please. So just very, very briefly on the deed to the property at issue, the Lamb property in this 7.1 plot of conservation land. The deed to the property was signed by the Lamb sisters back in December of 1978 when the property was sold to the town. And in the deed, there are conservation restrictions, and there are 3 specific conservation restrictions, but nowhere in the deed is there any statement of any time period. And nowhere in the deed is there any statement of that this should be perpetual or in perpetuity or forever or anything suggesting that. Indeed, nowhere in any document, contemporaneous document back from 1978, whether it be town meeting reports or warrant committee reports or any of the documents that we see back from 1978, nowhere does it say that this was intended to be perpetual or forever or anything suggesting that. It was supposed to be conservation land, but there was no time period suggested. Now, back at the same time period, we had, and we continue to have instances where land is donated to the town. And Sean, if you could go to the next slide. For example, back in 1978, the Eustis Estate, we were granted, the town was granted a perpetual conservation restriction, and you can see back in 1978. That land will be restricted in perpetuity because it exists in the document. And that is a distinction from the situation we have here with the deed to the land that the Conservation Commission controls. And Sean, you can go to the next slide. So what do you do when there's no time period in the deed? No time period evidenced in the deed. Well, according to Chapter 184, Section 23 of the Massachusetts General Law, a law that has been in effect since 1887, so it was well known in 1978, if there is no specific time period in the deed, then the restrictions are to be in place for 30 years. That's the law. That was the law in 1978, and that's what has governed for a long time. So, for this transfer, in this purchase or purchase by the town back in 1978, that 30-year period would have expired back in 2008, if my math is correct. Yes, I think 2008. So that's where we were last year. And that's where the analysis, for the most part, was last year. There were other things that were raised that we had to respond to, but that's really where we were last year. since that time, and since we spoke to you last year, there was a lawyer hired by the abutter, Home Inc., and the lawyer was hired to present or advocate for Home Inc., certainly, and has presented, because there is no specific time period, and because there's no specific intent evidenced in the deed, the lawyer has presented a argument that wasn't made at the time we spoke to you last year, and that is that there was created back in 1978 something called a public trust, and a public trust would, according to the lawyer, and I think that's the case, a public trust would obviate the 30-year time frame and allow for a perpetual restriction, and so the argument has been made that a public trust was created, and you create a public trust, or you show a public trust by showing that there was a general plan by all the parties to the agreement, and you can show the intent of the donor for perpetual restriction by some other document or some other evidence of that intent, and also in the cases cited by Home Inc.'s lawyer, often if there is a discount in the purchase price, that can be evidence of a public trust. And so the key things, two key things to focus on are: one, is there other evidence of the intent of the donor, and was there a discount to the purchase price? Now, with respect to the intent of the donor, as I mentioned before, there is no contemporaneous document anywhere that talks about this land being these restrictions being in place in perpetuity or forever. In fact, quite to the contrary. And Sean, if you can go to the next slide. In November 1978, which was 1 month before the purchase of the land by the town entered into an agreement by the state, signed by the Conservation Commission members, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and by the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. It was called the Self-Help Agreement, and that was signed before the purchase in December 1978. It's a public document, and that document, it does not say that that this will remain conservation land in perpetuity or forever. Quite to the contrary, what the document provides in paragraphs 4 and 5 is that the land will be held in conservation unless the participant, and that's the town, receives the appropriate authorization of the general court, the approval of the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, the process that we're going through now. So there was, in the agreement signed by the town a month before this purchase was made, an agreement by the town that this property would remain in conservation unless the town went through this process and received the appropriate approvals. And so, other than the fact that there was no document stating that there should have been, or that there was a perpetual conservation restriction, this document suggests quite to the contrary. Now, we have received 2 letters from the grandniece and grandnephews in Arlington, I believe, or Lexington and Bermuda, of the Lamb sisters, who have said that they believe that their great aunts wanted this to go on forever. And I'm sure, I believe that they believe that. They believe that their great aunts wanted this to be believed 45 years ago, that this restriction should be in place forever. But I'm sure they believe it, but that's not what they did 45 years ago. And there's no contemporaneous evidence that that's what they wanted or intended 45 years ago. And so, with respect to the intent of the donor, and that's one of the important things about a public trust, there's really no evidence that this should have been, or that they intended this to be a perpetual conservation restriction. And then second, I'm sorry, I'm talking a little bit at length here. Second, we go to the discount to the purchase price. Was there a discount to the purchase price? And Sean, if you can go to the next slide. So back in August of 1978, there was an appraisal of this whole purchase. And the purchase, the deed back in 1978 was for 22.1, I believe, acres, 22.1, 22, approximately 22 acres. So it included the active recreation land and your land, which is that 7.5 acres. And the estimate and the valuation in August of 1978 for your land, that 7-acre lot of conservation land, was $55,000. Sean, you can go to the next slide, please. And then we see subsequently this was also in August of 1978, the application for the self-help agreement with the state listed two appraisals, both the appraisal we just saw for your land, the $55,000, and another appraisal from DeWolf for $58,000, and then listed the proposed cost, and it's very hard to see in this copy, but first it listed $53,000 as the proposed cost, and then that was scratched out, and what was inserted was $56,566. And so that was the proposed cost as of August 1978, again, a few months before the December sale. Sean, and let me see if there's any. Yeah, Sean, if you could go to the next. Well, actually, go back just for a second. You'll see that there was a reference to the Lamb sisters and the fact that it's their property, and also a reference to the lawyer who represented them throughout this process, Mr. Paul Sargent, who had an office in Federal Street in Boston. Sean, if you can go to the next slide. And so fast forward to actually it was end of July 1979. So the town had sought reimbursement for their payment of $56,666 for this land, and they sought reimbursement from the town. And in this document, we see that the state acknowledges in its billing form that the cost of the land was $56,666, and the total project cost was $56,666, and the appropriations by the town for this project was $56,666. So there was no discount to this land. There's other evidence showing that there wasn't a discount. For example, the Lamb sisters sold other property to the town and in this time period, and they sold it at prices that were at a higher, actually no, a lower. Sorry, they had a lower cost per acre. So the evidence is pretty clear that there was no discount to the land we're talking about. Sean, if you could go to the next slide. So you just to recap before we go to eminent domain on the public trust, it's pretty clear that the evidence is there's no evidence of the intent of the donor that this be perpetual, and there was no discount to the purchase price, and so there was no public trust here, and that seems to be pretty clear from the evidence from the time. Let me just touch briefly on eminent domain, because another thing that has changed since last year is that we have an article for eminent domain, and that would allow the town to take the land from itself, because the town owns the land, take the land from itself by eminent domain, so that it could be used for other purposes, not for conservation purposes. This proposed article arose from the advice of town council as a result of the letter from Home Inc., the lawyer's letter from Home Inc., where it was argued that there was a public trust here. And our town council advised the town that to put the town in the best legal position we would also have a taking by eminent domain here, because that would end the discussion of a public trust. If we have the discussion of the public trust is very fact-based. Was there intent? Was there a discount on the purchase price? Again, it seems from the review of the facts that those aren't the case, but someone could file a claim, file a lawsuit, claiming that the evidence shows something else. And so we were advised that in order to put the town in the best legal position, if there were a claim, that we should allow for the taking by eminent domain, because that would obviate the need for engaging in a legal battle about whether there was a public trust here. Now, the town has used eminent domain before. It's not unusual that the town uses eminent domain. This is a unique circumstance for eminent domain. It's very unique for the town to be taking land from itself for no cash in order to put itself in the best legal position. But that's what this is, and nothing more. This isn't a situation where there could be a slippery slope, because we would have to go through this whole process and we'd have to give conservation land back to take conservation land out, or put back conservation land in to take conservation land out, and there is no land to do that. So this circumstance is not going to happen again. It is merely a mechanism to put the town in the best legal position if someone decides to spend the money to file a claim at some point. So that's everything that I have. I will just say, both Sean and I have alluded to the changes over the last year to the project, and I can say that the committee has worked very hard to try to meet the interests and to meet the needs of all the stakeholders here. And I think with the proposal as it has changed and as it has been improved in the last year, this is not just a school project. It is, the school aspect of it is very important. This project can solve the school overcrowding, which will benefit all of the residents of Milton. But it's not just a school project. This is also a parks project, because the proposal will put more land back to the parks than it takes out, and will also improve parking for the Parks Department. It's an abutters proposal, because it is a better proposal for the abutters. We move the project farther away from the abutters. So we've tried our best to meet the interests of the abutters as well. And it is a conservationist proposal. This is a proposal that meets the interests of any conservationist, because of the small amount of land that is coming out of conservation for a very good purpose, in exchange for the large amount of land that is going back into conservation. So we believe that it meets the interests not just of the residents and the parents and the school children of this town for the next several decades, but it also meets the interests of the parks, the abutters, and the conservationists. So with that, I'll apologize for my lack of brevity and let Sean move it along faster.
Thanks, Mike. So as Mike mentioned, for the land swap that we're having, similar to the eminent domain precedent, there is precedent through the state for Article 97 land swaps, specifically for schools. Gloucester, Millis, Lowell, Situate, Cambridge, Woburn, they have all done Article 97 land swaps previously. So for that 2.8 acres of conservation land and 4.4 acres of active recreation, what we were proposing, or what's changed from last year. So last year, we had the two parcels that were included on Herrick Drive, shown in blue and yellow. And then this year, we added in an additional parcel on School Street on the upper right portion. So to increase the amount of Article 97 land. Similarly, over at Randolph Ave on the site walk that we had, we've got approximately 6 acres in the middle. And with both of these parcels, it unifies adjacent conservation land to create a continuous parcel. Now, when we went on the site walks with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, we mentioned to them that, there were other parcels that we weren't including as part of the quote unquote land swap because they were already covered under Article 97. However, because of the change of ownership from them, meaning they're town-owned parcels that are now going to be deeded to the conservation land, they recommended to us to revise our articles to include these lands as part of it. So the Canton and Highland Ave parcel is approximately 5 acres. The Pope's Pond parcel that's currently owned by the town select board would also be transferred over to the Conservation Commission and deeded. Now, we walked all these sites with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. When we're at the Randolph Ave site and with the map that you were seeing there, they asked in question about 3 parcels that were up behind it off the access road, and then additional 2 parcels shown on the bottom corner of this map. Their request was, we thought the lease line for the golf course was basically along the boundaries shown in green here, but they asked us to look at it. So a rotated map, the parcels that we're just looking at, the yellow is the Randolph Ave parcel that we've always been talking about, approximately 6 acres. The access road comes up this way, and Randolph Ave runs along the edge here. So just for allowing people to orient themselves. The heavy red dashed line that you see here is the actual lease boundary of the golf course. So what happens now is, as Mrs. Zulus alluded to, it opens up a few additional parcels that we've identified very recently. Along the access road here are 2 parcels, one about 4 acres, one about 0.83 acres. Our intent for those is to become parks land for them in exchange. So for the 4.86 acres we'll be providing here, it's in exchange for approximately 4.4 acres of parks land we'd be taking. So as Mr. Zula said, we're putting now more parkland in than we are taking out. Additionally, on the other side, there are essentially 2 parcels over here that we're going to be adding into conservation, approximately 18.94 acres. So when we look at the ratios of land going into Article 97 and coming out of Article 97, currently going into Article 97 is 33.87 acres. Coming out of Article 97 is 7.26 acres. This is approximately a 4.66 to 1 ratio. So for every acre of land we're taking out of Article 97, we're putting over 4.6 in. For references, our ratio last year when we presented to this committee and were approved, we were roughly 2 to 1 ratio. So we've done better than double than what we had last year. And that doesn't include the Canton and Highland Ave parcels nor Pope's Pond when we do that math. Now, from a strict conservation land lens, when we look at this again, we're only taking out 2.8 acres of conservation land. The deeded land that will now be owned by this commission is over 75 acres. And with that, I'll open up to any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentations, articulate and concise. We appreciate it, but you are asking that we approve the swap. But as I understand it, the articles before the annual town meeting that begins next week, there are 2 articles, 31 and 32. And as currently written, just to avoid any confusion, am I correct that you and we anticipate that the numbers that you have just pointed out to us will be on an amended article, both in 31 and 32. 31 is the land approving the Article 97 swap, and Article 32 is approving or supporting the article that asks that the compensation for taking the land be in that amount of 75 acres. Is that correct?
No, that is correct, Mr. Chair. I have kind of draft copies of them if you need me to present them.
I would appreciate
Okay. Yeah, if you just give me a second, I just gotta find them. Sorry.
that. Right.
And just let me know you can see it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we can see it. That's good, Sean. Thank you. So that's Article 31, and that is the swap portion of this, correct?
This Article 31 is the land swap portion of this.
Which would be in conformance of
Yes,
with the provisions of Article 97.
correct. So what we were doing here, and as the select board voted on this, I believe a few weeks ago, not including the new land that we just identified off the access road. They had authorized the transfer of items 1 through 5. Item 6 here is the new acreage that we just found today. So again, specifically for this committee, it's an additional 18.94 acres. And then similarly for Article 32, that same acreage is put into there as additional land.
So 32 would not be the Article 97 swap, but rather it would be the compensation if eminent domain were to take that. Is that correct?
You are correct, sir.
All right. So the bottom line is that you're asking us to give up 2.8 acres of land owned by the Conservation Commission. And in return, we would receive 75 acres of land.
That is correct.
I understand. I understand. All right. Are there questions that commissioners would like to ask?
I have one.
Yes, Tom.
Referring to one of the new parcels that would be transferred to Parks Department, the one on the access road. It was referred to as 4.8 acres, I think. I was just looking at the GIS for the area, and it looks like nearly all of that 4.8 acres is wetland. As we know, all these parcels have to be appraised at some point. My question is, if it were the case that nearly all of that area is wetland, would that affect the fair market value appraisal that's supposed to be done on it?
I presume that it would. It would affect the fair market value. But we have talked about this at a public meeting at the town hall in early April. And there are two components to the appraisal that I think we were talking about at that point. And I did discuss getting a fair market value appraisal of these parcels that we're talking about. And I also discussed trying to get an ecological appraisal. And I called Landvest and I called another, I can't think of the other, but very well-known land appraisal company. And they said, look, we do fair market value, but ecological value is done by somebody other than a real estate appraiser. And in fact, it turns out that the ecological appraisal is done by EOEEA if and when the town meeting approves by 2/3 the proposed transfer, then it goes to them and they do the ecological appraisal. And in fact, it's my understanding that EOEEA actually asked that the Pope's Pond parcel, the 41 acres, and the land in on the what I call between the Randolph Avenue parcel of 6 acres and the lease line. That turns out to be about 25 acres. But they asked to have that included. Am I correct on that, Sean?
That is correct. That was one of the things as they looked at the map when I was walking the site with them. They asked us to look, further on. So I worked with Tim Zawinski to pull the map that actually had the lease lines on there that showed portions of the parcels remaining.
So you're right in your question on the appraisal, but I would suggest that it's really up to EOEEA to do it, and this proposal contemplates responding to exactly what EOEEA asked for, to increase the amount of land going to the Conservation Commission. And if you compare 2.8 acres with 75 acres, I don't know how any appraisal would say that that's anything other than an extraordinary trade.
Well, the majority of those 70-odd acres is the 41 acres from Pope's Pond. And as we discussed at an earlier meeting, back in 1970, all that 41 acres was named as conservation land. So from my perspective, I have difficulty not thinking, aren't we getting something that we already have? And if we are, why are we counting it to mitigate for the loss of something else?
Well, again, the fact is that the deed for the 41 acres does not say to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, I don't dispute that. I just think that it has been considered conservation land for a long time, whether or not this particular legal bookkeeping aspect was achieved.
Understood. Are there other questions from commissioners or comments? I'm not sure there's such a thing as a butter under these circumstances, but are there members of the public that have a question or would like to make a comment? I'm looking for hands and I don't see anyone.
I don't either,
yeah.
John.
Oh, no,
Oh.
Maggie and Pete have their hands up. Now I see that. Maggie, I
Okay.
saw your hand first, so can you go ahead? You're on mute, Maggie.
Oh, thanks.
There
Thanks
you
for
are.
letting me talk. First off, I just wanted to ask, could you repeat that comment about the horse farm on Route 28?
I think that goes to Sean.
Yeah, correct. So we had looked at the horse farm that was up at Randolph Ave as a private property on 28 to purchase it or buy it at some point. My understanding is that it's been sold. It's basically planned for a 40B project.
No, so I think that's a different property. So the property that is at that has the 40B on it is at 728 Randolph Ave, and that's a separate piece of property. I think that's only a 1 acre piece of property. the horse farm has another entrance off of Randolph Ave. So that's a different piece of property. So just to clarify, that other horse farm is, as of today, I don't think part of any 40B project.
Okay, thank you.
So that's just one clarifying. The other clarifying was about the eminent domain. So I've heard a couple different times that it was town council. Town council has it's on advice from town council that we are pursuing eminent domain. So I reached out to town council, because when I've had a conversation with Kevin before about something else, I asked him what the role of town council was. And he said it is not the role of town council to provide any policy. And the role of town council is only to act upon the policy that the town is presenting, if it's legal or not. Because my question to him is, if this was his recommendation for eminent domain, and he's part of making the policy, would his firm then would they share in the burden of paying for an appeal in defending the policy if the policy is being recommended by him and his firm? And so he reiterated that it's not his policy, it's only he's providing legal advice. And so I also, said that I do believe it's a misstatement when it's asserted that eminent domain is the more cost-effective way to go, because it really isn't, because eminent domain is still up for an appeal. So I think that's should be clarified, because from what I'm hearing from people on the street, they think, oh, we're taking it by eminent domain because it's going to save us money. But it really doesn't save money. We still have to fight an appeal. So I just do hope that you rethink this. As you know, your charge is to protect all conservation land. And as I've stated before, back in 1978, my father put that land in conservation. And in 1977, he was on the Tucker School Building Project. So you can have both a perspective of building schools and preserving conservation. And I don't think they have to be at odds with each other. And I'm really disheartened that we are putting these two policies against each other. And I do agree with Tom. I think it's a complete, as someone said at your meeting, a shell game that you're putting land that's already considered conservation. I think that's totally inappropriate. And I do hope that you do not support this. So thank you very much.
All right, just as a quick response, I believe that EOEEA, Bob O'Connor, asked Milton to put it into the swap. So I don't think that's a shell game. I think that's EOEEA asking the town to do it. But in any event, I appreciate your comments. And Pete, another hand. Pete, there you are. Pete Jackson? I see your hand, but you're still on mute and I don't see you. We can solve
Okay.
because I know
Okay,
people. There you are.
I hardly know where to start. I think I'll save a lot of these comments for town meeting. Mr. Zulus, you said that the town has often taken land from itself by eminent domain. Can you give me some, I know you don't have to respond, so I'll just put it out there. I'd love to hear some examples of where that was done.
Yeah, so yeah, Pete, I mean, it's been done. I wouldn't say often. We don't do it every week, but it's been done, and we can get you examples of that. I think, Sean probably has a couple of examples. I don't have them in front of me, but I think the last one that I'm aware of that was done back in 2015, maybe right before it was before I was on the select board. But so it's not certainly not an unusual thing. It's been done before. This kind hasn't been done. This is a unique circumstance where it's been done, and so sure, we can get you examples of when town's taken property by eminent domain. This one's a little different because it's not taking private property. It's really just as I mentioned, putting the town in the best legal position. And maybe I'll just take the moment to clarify. I'm not sure what Maggie meant about policy or. The town council's role is to give legal advice. Town council gave us legal advice of how to put us in the best legal position, and that's what we're seeking to do. There's no policy here. This is acting on how to put the town in the best legal position for this situation. So no policy here.
Okay. Yeah, I'd appreciate getting a list of places where the town has taken land from itself by eminent domain.
I don't know, Pete, if it's ever happened from itself.
Well, I thought that's what you said.
No. I just taken land by eminent domain.
Oh.
I don't know that we've ever had this unique circumstance where we've taken from ourselves, for in order to put us in the best legal position. I don't know that that's ever happened. We've taken land by eminent domain. I don't know
Sure.
that we've done it by ourselves from ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, by eminent domain. Certainly, but not from itself. I thought that's what you were suggesting.
No. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear.
Okay. The comment that more land is going into parks than has been taken out, and for that you rely on that new piece of property, which was just identified Monday. Because it wasn't presented to the Park Commission on Monday morning. So Monday afternoon, all of a sudden a new parcel was identified. These new parcels haven't been approved for part of the project by the Select Board. They haven't been presented to the School Building Committee and being approved for them to be as part of the project. I'm assuming that's going to happen between now and town meeting. The park parcel is a slope coming down to a wetland. So there's no active recreational value there to replace the recreational value that's on the parcel that's going out. So I continue to maintain that there's no land for parks being offered in this whole thing. The 71 acres is even more of a ridiculous statement than the 51 acres used to be. So again, we'll point that out in detail when the time comes. This is a ridiculous shell game, and the Conservation Commission should be ashamed that it's even verbalizing it in that way. I'm tired of doing real estate research for the Select Board and the School Building Committee. All I've got to say is you've got ownership on some of those new parcels wrong. I think you ought to take that into account, do some legal research. You suggested, or you're both verbally and on your table there, you indicated that there was going to be 75 new acres deeded to the Conservation Commission. My understanding, there's no new deeds that are going to be written. You're going to transfer care and control. If you're going to deed that land to the Conservation Commission, I'd love to see that happen. So there's lots here. There's lots that is misinformation, not by lies, but by inference. I'm shocked at what's going on here, but we'll battle it out in other forums. Thank you.
Are there other comments, questions, members of the public? Well, I'm
I have my hand up here. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, there
So
it is,
do
Joe. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you.
I know, it's hard to see. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp, obviously, as Maggie here and Pete on this, especially the eminent domain. That just does not feel right to me. I'd hate to see Milton be the first to set this precedent, using that this way. As I understand it, it hasn't been done except for hundreds. So that's something that, is kind of a reputation thing. But for a point of clarification, I kind of have got a quick look at that map. I did take a screenshot of it, but I haven't looked back at it. This new land, this is really because I don't know. As part of the trade is whether the parcels, whether they're buildable or accessible, a piece of this evaluation, because a couple of them look quickly when I looked like they were right up against the Blue Hills with some private land or something around them. And I'm just wondering if that's an issue. And if you've already said it, I might have missed it. I don't know, but if they're buildable or accessible, is that an issue on those parcels that you found today or yesterday or whenever? Is that clear what I'm saying?
I think so. But what I saw that Sean put up there on the Randolph Avenue side, I know that the corner of Ridgewood and Randolph Avenue, I think the parcel that abuts the highway is MDC reservation.
It is, yeah.
I believe that, and I think it shows that on the map that Sean had. I don't know if you can put it back up, Sean.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just please for a second, if possible. Maybe I was thinking of a piece up in the upper left-hand corner, I think, a couple of pieces.
There you go, Joe.
So
Yep, just let me know.
12.74, 6 acres up there. Yeah, that area there. What's the story there with the Blue Hills Reservation land? It's hard to read that print, but
Is that better?
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
No
So
problem.
is this land, I don't know, is it accessible land? Is it buildable land? What type of land is this? I don't know that spot. Is it forested? Is it,
Yeah,
wetlands? I think it said the possibility of that.
yeah. So you asking the question to me or the commission, John?
Oh, I'm going to pass it
Yeah.
right through to you, Sean.
All right, perfect. My anticipation just from looking at Google Maps, in this area, it's all wooded land. The anticipation of trying to build up here, I ask everybody just to reference in this same area. The town is looking to build an animal shelter, a 4,000 square foot animal shelter that is being hindered by escalated construction costs due to subsurface environments there of granite ledge. So, when you look at the cost for a 4,000 square foot animal shelter, and then think about trying to build a 100,000 square foot school, again, the cost for that would be astronomical.
And that's on the 6.2, right? You're talking on
Yeah, essentially all of this back here.
all of it?
Yep.
Are you oriented, Joe, as to where that is? Because
Yeah, no, I kind of get it now. First I wasn't so sure. Now I see how that is. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
No problem. Sorry, Joe. The map, I couldn't get it to be the same orientation as the previous one.
No.
Mr. Chair, if I could, to a point that was raised earlier, and
Yes, sir.
best to lower my hands. The commission, when you look at your regulations that you have there under section 9, the commission has an opportunity of waiver of their regulations. Basically, when the strict control of those regulations would cause relief of it would serve a good public interest. I know we're talking about land, but it is for a school, and I can't think of a better public interest, that this commission, if they had to relieve themselves, would be, essentially for a public school for children.
Right, no, that's a significant point. That is section 9 of our regulation. And I appreciate you pointing that out, not just for our benefit, the commission members, but also for the members of the public. Everybody's a good guy in this discussion. There are no bad guys in this. Everyone's on the side of the angels. We've got people looking at, public school benefits. We've got people looking at conservation benefits. But I'm still overcome by, and I don't think it's a shell game. But I think it's an extraordinary public benefit to get 75 acres into the control and custody of the Conservation Commission in exchange for 2.8 acres. I mean, that's just that's unheard of in my mind. That may be just my personal take on it, and I don't think it's a shell game, and I'm particularly impressed by the fact that under Article 97, it's EOEEA itself asked that the town put, like Pope's Pond, not like, specifically, they asked to have Pope's Pond included in that. So that's definitely not a shell game. And as I understand it, EOEEA asked for the land in back of the Randolph 6-acre parcel, the Randolph Avenue 6-acre parcel. So I think that would extinguish any argument that this is a shell game. This is coming from those that decide the ecological value of the trade and the benefit, the public benefit. And I'm also very impressed by the open space. I know we have many resources to protect on the Conservation Commission, but open space seems to be front and center of what's going to, maintain the character of this town. We see the CPA devoting money to the preservation of open space, and this gives us a huge opportunity to preserve open space. And we're talking 75 acres. And Tom, I know that your concern is that back when Pope's Pond was first purchased, the idea that I thought it went to the Conservation Commission, but it didn't. So I think here's an opportunity to correct that mistake from however many years ago, 60 years ago. So I see a tremendous benefit to the Conservation Commission and to the public, in addition to the public benefit that goes to the school children of our town. Other commission members like to be heard, members of the public that want to make a comment. And I'm stalling here to see if there's anyone. If not, then I would propose that the motions be heard, and the motion that, Sean, that you had up, could you put those up again? One was for article to support, whether to support Article 31, and the second one was whether to support Article 32. If we could take a look at those, I just want a moment for everyone, commission members, to read it. And for members of the public also. And then I think it sounds like we're ready for a vote on this.
And just let me know if you need me to scroll down to Mr. Chair or any other commissioners.
Yeah, I'm a slow reader, so if you could just keep it there for a minute, but then I do want to get all the way down. Because we're talking about in exchange here, we've got the 6 acres on Randolph Avenue. We've got 3 acres on Herrick Drive, 1 acre on School Street, 5 acres on Highland Street and Canton Avenue, approximately 41 acres around Pope's Pond. Then possibly other land including, and that possible other land is part of the article itself, approximately 18.94 acres on Randolph Avenue. That's what we're just talking about with Joe. So that's the motion. And if we scroll back to the top, the question before the commission is whether or not we will pass a resolution to support Article 31, which is in the warrant, which will be heard at the annual town meeting next Monday, or starting next Monday.
I have another comment, John.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, this article is presented as a swap, meaning some land now that we are supposed to protect will be lost and developed, and other land that isn't developed will reportedly have additional protections, although, as we've discussed on many of these parcels, and indeed all of them, I think there are other constraints that make development less likely. For instance, the parcel we were just talking about, the backland by the landfill, there is no road that comes anywhere near that parcel. So it doesn't seem likely that anything will be built on it. Even if that was the intent, a new road would have to be built through the reservation or over the golf course somewhere, or maybe the gas line access road could be improved, although it's perched on a slope. Anyway,
Tom, can I
yeah,
don't want to interrupt you, but that access road, we've already, seen the application for the 40B project there.
I'm not talking about the paved part by the horse farm. I'm talking the part that goes around the side of the Milton mound. It's on halfway up that hill slope.
Sure,
Goes over to the gas line pumping station.
But you're saying that it's not accessible, and the 40B, just as part of their construction project, they have to pay for the road.
The 40B road is a different road. It's a road that's on the surface. It's not the road that was built as part of the pile of dirt. That's the road I'm talking about.
No, I'm talking about the access road, part of the back entrance to the 40B project. The developer has to pave the access road, which, by the way, also leads to the animal shelter.
Yeah,
So
we're talking
what do you mean
about
it's
different
not accessible?
roads. We're talking about, if you go in the access road, at some point, if you want to go to the gas line pump station, you have to take a right off the access road.
Correct. You are
Yes.
correct.
Now, this land we're talking about is down the other end after you've taken that right. In other
Yes.
words, it's closer to Ridgewood than it is to the shelter site. It's
I
way
agree.
over at that end. And that is where the access difficulty is, because that road that's built on the side of the landfill is perched up in the air and not paved, and it's already on the leased premises of the golf course. So it's just hard to get to this land we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tom.
all right. At any rate,
Tom, may I ask, do you think it's outside of reason that the golf course, which is a private entity, wouldn't consider that as a potential development option?
they have, this is land that they don't own. It's the town's land, right?
Right.
So why are they developing our land?
I'm not saying they would develop it, but I mean, that's a private entity that owns it that,
No, the parcels we're talking about are public land, right?
but it abuts the golf course.
Yes, all right. So you're saying maybe Quarry Hills will try to develop the public land. They have to get the land first, right?
I'm saying it's, I mean, if you're saying it's not entirely not developable, I would disagree.
Where is the access? That's the question. At any rate, with all the parcels, there are issues like this, and particularly concerning to me is whether I, as a commissioner, can answer somebody who says to me, did you get value for what you gave up? And the value of protectability is one I've been thinking about, but another one is the value of land simply for development, namely fair market value. And I'm confident that the Guile Road parcel has a tremendous fair market value for development. But as for these other parcels, there are many constraints, primarily wetlands on probably 90% of them. And I would like to know what an appraiser, an independent appraiser, would say about the comparative values of these parcels. And as a matter of fact, school building committee in the town, when it makes its application to EOEA, has to get those appraisals and present them. It's part of the Public Land Preservation Act requirements. And if those appraisals are going to have to be got anyways, I would like to have them now so I could be confident that when I said we are getting equal value, that people with professional expertise in land value had assured me that that was the case. But I am not there now. I am in the dark about these values, and the list of parcels keeps changing too. They keep popping in and out, and I just wish that as a commission member being asked to declare that valuable conservation land is surplus to the needs of the town, the conservation needs of the town, that's what we have to say. We really need to know that what we're getting is worth what we're giving up. And what we do know about all these things we're getting is that they're free. They don't cost anything. Nothing is being offered to us that anyone is going to pay for. But we do know that the Guile Road property is quite valuable. So it doesn't seem to me that I can say what we're getting is worth as much as what we're giving up. I just don't have that in front of me. It doesn't make sense to me intuitively, and I don't have the numbers that say it's the case. On acreage, yes, but acreage is not the only thing we're talking about. We're talking about other values that haven't been established. So that's why I don't think this swap has been demonstrated to be advantageous to the conservation interest. So I know others don't agree about this, and that is fine. I'm just trying to make clear why I feel the way I do.
Understood. Thank you, Tom. Any other commissioners? All right, this is written as a motion to pass a resolution of support for Article 31, and I would make that motion before the commission this evening. Is there a second to adopt the motion as written?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Hans. Is there any discussion among commission members? I can't see everybody, but that's okay. But yeah, I'll have to shout out if, okay, now I can. Is there any discussion? Then we're ready for a vote. And this will be a roll call vote. And I'm just reading across the screen here. Hans, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
I'm losing people here. I've got Hans and Arthur. Wendy, I'm sorry. How do you vote, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, how do you vote?
No.
All right. And who am I missing? John Kiernan, I vote yes.
Ingrid.
Oh, Ingrid, I'm sorry. I'm looking for people, and I don't see a name there, Ingrid. I apologize to you. Ingrid, please. How do you vote?
Ingrid, you're on mute.
Ingrid, are you there? If you are, if you can hear, you are on mute. How do we fix this? We can't see. I'm going to call her right now. Did the mute just come off?
No, I just unmuted myself. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to do it from my cell phone. Yeah, I vote aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's, we've got everybody that's 5 yay, 1 nay. All right, so the motion carries. Next, we go to the next motion, which is Article 32. Sean, could I ask you to screen share again and put that back up before us? All right, and this is a motion to pass a resolution of support for Article 32 in the warrant for the annual town meeting, May 1, 2023, to be amended to authorize the select board to acquire for school purposes by purchase, taking by eminent domain or otherwise. And then it goes through that the compensation of that will include approximately 6 acres of land on Randolph Avenue, 3 acres on Herrick Drive, 1 acre on School Street, 5 acres on Highland Street and Canton Avenue, approximately 41 acres of land inclusive of Pope's Pond, and possibly other land, including approximately 18.94 acres of land off of Randolph Avenue that we've seen screen shared previously. So I propose that as a motion and ask if there is any discussion among commission members.
John, one thing that Tom had brought up, and I think it's worth following up on, is prior to receiving the land, I know this would just look to get us to town meeting, but I think it may be helpful to have a wildlife habitat analysis done for the parcels. I don't think it would be an immediate request, but I think that will help to aid the review of the ecological value of the parcels.
Well,
I agree. This is Ingrid, particularly relevant, I think, to the parcels off of Randolph Ave.
My only comment is that sounds perfectly reasonable, but it's actually, as I understand it from EOEEA, that's their job after, if the town meeting votes 2/3 to approve the swap or the eminent domain, it's the swap, because it's Article 97 that they get involved in. It's up to them to make that determination. We could certainly, if the town meeting votes to approve it, and we had a funding source to get that done, it makes perfect sense to do it. Although I do believe that EOEEA is going to do it themselves. So it's more of a sequencing issue than it is a component part of the process issue. I think it will be done. It's just who does it and when.
Okay, if we could get clarification on that, it would be helpful, but I don't think it really, if we have assurance that it will be done prior to the Conservation Commission accepting the parcels, I think I'd be happy with that.
All right, well, that is, as I understand it, and I have talked to people at EOEEA, and it's my understanding from talking to them that that's what they do, because they have to assign that value to make sure that the land is, in mitigation of the taking, that land is put back into the park function. So that was a specific conversation I had, because I was concerned, as we had talked, Tom, and we had talked at a public meeting, but we had talked about appraisals before. And I did discuss with folks at the EOEEA, and they said that's what they do. That's part of that process. So it's
and we don't have that information.
Yeah, it just wasn't clear to me whether or not that would be provided to the commission, that analysis, or if that's something that's done internally by EEA as
it's all part of the public record according to the Public Lands Preservation Act.
I agree. So yes, the answer is yes, we will be recipients of that, as all members of the public are as well.
I have a comment additionally, if I might. I would like to ask the commissioners if they read the recommendation of the Warren Committee. And I'd just like to, as you know, the Warren Committee voted against the swap. And they used reasoning that
Tom, you may be on the wrong article.
Yes, but it also applies.
What do you mean, yes, but? Wait a minute. What do you mean, yes, but?
Well,
You're talking
they have
about
a
Article-
recommendation for Article 32 as well.
Well,
But if I'm a little late with this, perhaps that's the case. but I think it is a topic worthy of notice here of what they said in regard to conservation.
With respect to Article 31 or Article 32?
Both, because they're both related. They're both about the same process in the same land. They said, finally, the Warren Committee was of the opinion that as a starting proposition, conservation land in town simply needs to be preserved. And they go on, with regard to the Lamb property, the Warren Committee concluded that the Lamb sisters, through their deed and as reflected in the record of town meeting, clearly intended for the property to be held in conservation. And it was clearly in the intent of the town to hold it so. On this issue, the Warren Committee recommits itself to the pledge that the town once made to protect, preserve, and enhance the Lamb property, and that the town should make all effort to preserve and honor the trust, intent, and promises made to those people who have donated or transferred land or property to the town in one way or another. Now, we have voted all in favor of this article, except for myself. And I would ask the other commissioners how their vote in favor jives with this need expressed by the Warren Committee to protect land that is given to us to protect.
Well, Tom, you just read from a comment on Article 31, which we've already
Yes.
voted on. And before us now is Article 32.
All right.
And I will address what you just said.
Yeah.
And the last line of what you just read about those people who have donated or transferred land. I think you heard Mike Zulus very articulately say, the land was sold. It was not donated. And that goes to the legal basis that town council gave us that there is an expiration after 30 years. That's a key element that the warrant committee apparently missed because it says donated or transferred. And in fact, the land was sold. That's a fact.
Yes, I don't believe Mr. Zulus was correct when he said it wasn't sold at a discount because the entire 22 acres were appraised at 200,000 and they were bought with funds acquired by the town at 170,000. So that was a 15% discount. And by the way, the town did not pay any of the money for the conservation land because it was split between the grant making agencies, state and federal, and to expect that they will not come for their value when we propose to take away the value they paid for is, I think, a little naive. And that's part of the myth of this whole transaction, that conservation land is free. It wasn't free then, and it's not free now. And we're not going to get it for free. And we're not going to find out how much it costs until we're already in the soup with the lawsuits and the EOEA and all the rest. But I predict that it will cost what it's worth rather than the nothing that is being advertised here.
Understood. Any other questions or comments from commission members? Then I propose, if you can go back to the screen share, Sean, if you do that. So I propose the motion that's written here before us on the screen share to pass a resolution in support for Article 32 in the warrant of the annual town meeting and the compensation to the Conservation Commission in consideration for the transfer to the care, custody, and control of the Milton Conservation Commission would include the approximately 56 acres in exchange for 2.8 acres. We would get, as currently proposed, the 56 acres and possibly other land. That's the additional 19 acres. So that would get it up to 75 acres. I make that motion. Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Hans. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote. Hans, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wendy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Tom, how do you vote?
No,
And I, John Kiernan, vote yes. So the motion carries 5-1. Thank you very much. I believe that concludes the item number 1 on the agenda. I appreciate the public's participation and patience. All set? Are we ready to move on to number 2 on the agenda? Tell me, which one is it? Is it the minutes? And I will confess to you that I would prefer to kick the minutes of the past meetings to the next meeting, which is May 6th. I'm sorry, 9th. I'm messing up my dates here. Steve, help me out.
Yes, May 9th.
May 9th. I would propose that we move the minutes to the 9th.
Mr. Chairman, the next item then is Conservation Commission appointment to the Climate Action Planning Committee.
Yes. And I know that the last time we had a meeting, we talked about that. I think that's an important position. And I had asked for volunteers before. And I'm wondering, I did not have a chance to follow through with everyone here, but at one time I thought that Ingrid was interested, and she has indicated that time constraints are such that she would not be an appropriate person to offer her own services. So Arthur, I would ask you if you would have the time or inclination to be the designee of the Conservation Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I would be willing to do so until such time as maybe another person on the commission or identified by the commission would be willing to serve in that capacity.
I'd like to put Todd Hamilton's name forward.
Arthur, I think you won the national search. Even if it's temporary, you are. I think it's up for discussion. Does anybody have another suggestion? I think you were being facetious, Hans. I don't know. I can't tell.
Unless Todd objects.
No. But he's not here to object. That's why. All right, then I would propose a motion to appoint Arthur Doyle as the designee of the Conservation Commission to the Climate Change Committee. Is there a second for that?
I second it.
Thanks, Tom. Any discussion? All in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Wendy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, I lost you. How do you vote?
Yeah,
You broke up. I think it was a yes, but can you try it again?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh,
Favor.
okay. Arthur, how do you vote?
I have to abstain, Mr. Chairman.
Oh. All right.
Decide the subject.
I'll vote yes. All right. Did I get everybody? The screen.
I vote yes as well.
Okay. Thanks, Hans. All right.
Mike, does that make you happy?
Very happy, very happy.
All right. I think that concludes our agenda for the evening. If we agree to kick the minutes over to the 9th of May, and then unless we have additional business.
I do just have one quick clarifying question. And I know that we finished with the school building piece, but what's the time frame for that to be constructed, assuming this is approved through town meeting? When would we have shovels in the ground?
somebody else is going to have to guesstimate that one because it's got to go to EOEEA. It's got to go. There are several hurdles. Mike Zulis, I think you know every hurdle there is there. So you might be able to give us a guesstimate or at least a sequence of approvals that are required.
Yeah, we're estimating 9 to 12 months on the EOEEA and interior side, and could be less. We hope, but that seems to be a conservative estimate. And then Sean has the, and then obviously we have to get funding. The town will have to approve funding, and whether we can seek funding next May. It seems to me that would kind of be the next opportunity to seek funding for this. And then once we seek funding, then Sean can take it from there, because he's the construction or design guy.
Yeah, so the funding component is essentially two-part. We just resubmitted to the MSBA our application or a statement of interest, and we'll happily, if we're accepted to that throughout the course of that review time with the OEA, we'll happily take it. But the construction time, once we get through whatever we call them, hurdles or checkpoints that we have to go through, and funding's provided, the construction duration will probably be about 3 years. But to say when that shovel in the ground is going to go into, until the funding and the check marks are done, it's hard to truly say exactly, a time frame associated with that.
Rough estimate?
And I've said this multiple times too, if I get green lighted on everything and we get funding next year, call it probably another 1.5 years for design, because we have to basically work with architects and engineers to do everything. So that would be, next year is 2024, sometime 2025, bid it out, construct it.
2025, best case scenario.
And late 2025, early 2026. If you again, based on full green lights from everybody, which would be nice.
Okay. My daughter will miss out on it.
All right. Thanks. One comment on additional business. I did have an opportunity to meet with Richard Wells on the Milton Landing Committee for the Select Board, and Caroline Kinsella from the Board of Health, and Josh Lee, the Assistant Town Planner, down at Milton Landing. And the issue was how to best coordinate the dredging project. That we're involved in a state grant that had anticipated dredging the river right where Milton Landing is. It is contaminated. We've received the test reports, and the difficulty is twofold. First, we need to take some action to warn the public that shellfish and fish could be contaminated by these PCBs that have been found in excessive quantities in that area. Now, we already know from the EPA and the Superfund site testing that there's contamination upstream. The problem is if the dredge project goes forward first and the Superfund follows, Superfund is going to release a lot of PCBs from the two upstream dams. So it seems that the current thought is that they should be coordinated so that the Superfund goes first. And any released PCBs would be picked up then in the dredging and decontamination project at Milton Lower Mills. Keeping in mind that the Adams Street Bridge is the limit of work for the Superfund for the EPA funding. So right now, the short-term goal is to get those signs posted, warning the public that eating shellfish or fish caught in that area could be dangerous. And number two, coordinating with the EPA to make sure that the proper sequence is utilized to make sure that we get all of the contaminants out in sequence. So I'll keep you updated. DEP has got some signs that they have agreed to provide to us. So we're looking to pick up about 12 signs. And I think depending upon where they go, we might have to come back to ourselves as we did with the Conservation Commission land signs to approve an RDA simply to place the signs. Some of the signs that like at Milton Landing are easy. They can just go on existing signposts there. But I'll report back as soon as we receive the sign from me.
Mr. Chairman,
A motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, a question, if I may?
Yes.
On this important point, was there related discussion with the Neponset River Watershed Association or with the Coastal Zone Management? Or would they be consulted for support?
For support of what?
The signage?
No, I don't think CZM was consulted. And I don't, I can certainly get a message out to Ian Cook at the Neponset River Valley, but the reason I'm comfortable that they know about it is that the other signs upstream have already gone, they're already in place.
Oh, that's great. Good.
DEP did it. So upstream, they've already been placed until you get to the Milton border. The problem is when you get to Milton, we don't have any signs.
Well, I think you're offering to get in touch with Ian is very important because they would want to know about what's happening downstream in the appropriate warning signage relative to that activity as well. At the same time, we're going to have dredging going on in other parts of these 3 locations on the Neponset River. So all of that's going to have to be coordinated. And I know Ian and his staff have been involved in the planning for the dredging.
Right. And I did receive it, and I will give it to, I can probably pass it around electronically, but we did receive a copy of the tie-in bond testing of the PCBs in the Milton Landing area. And they're up there. The concentrations are pretty high. So if something needs to be done, it will be done. It just needs to be done in a coordinated fashion. But I'll get that tie-in bond report out. I think it's already been submitted to the planning board. I think they have a copy as well.
We really have to be protective of the smelt hatchery.
Yes, right. And that was a focus of discussion with the Board of Health and Richard Wells and Josh Lee.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thanks. If nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Arthur. I'll second that one. All in favor? I think we can do a general call. Aye.
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 All right. Ingrid, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Aye.
Okay, good. Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much, folks. We're now adjourned. Appreciate your time, patience, and courtesy. Good night, all.
Aye.
Good night, all.